A wild ride and an Allison win at Daytona. Nissan nails another Camel GT win, and it wouldn't be 4th of July without fireworks. Stay tuned for action on Motorweek Illustrated.
Motorweek Illustrated is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dave DeSpain. Bob Varsha is in Europe for 2 weeks covering the Grand Prix circuit for ESPN. Mike Joy will join us in a moment. He'll have all the stock car news. And we're going to begin today with IndyCar racing. Championship auto racing teams, CART, is one step closer to taking its show overseas. FISA, the international federation which governs worldwide auto racing, has modified its rules prohibiting IndyCar racing outside North America. That could pave the way for rumored IndyCar races in Australia, Japan, England, and elsewhere. Now, the new regulations were approved last week in Paris. They list 5 preconditions for an overseas IndyCar race. A so-called trial race must be held first. The race sanction, rule book, and circuit all have to be approved by FISA, and the FIA, FISA's parent organization, will retain the television rights. CART spokesman Mel Poole said this week that his organization has already agreed to everything except the TV deal, and he added that, quote, seems to be workable. Now, meanwhile, an Australian racing paper this week called it virtually certain that the 1990 CART season opener will be Down Under, a street race in Queensland, Australia, in late February or early March. Poole's response to that? No comment. The CART PPG World Series was in Cleveland over the July holiday weekend. With that story, Chris McClure.
All season long, the man behind the wheel of this race car, Michael Andretti, has been very fast, but other people have been winning races. At Indianapolis, an opportunity to win, and the engine went away late. At Milwaukee, again, an opportunity to win, and a bad set of tires on the last stop betrayed him. At Detroit, a pole position. He led 2/3 of the race and hit the wall. And again here in Cleveland, on the pole, perhaps in the best position of them all to finally get in the winner's circle in 1989. A clean, solid start and the fastest lap of the race gave credence to the notion that Michael might indeed end a victory drought that has now stretched over 27 races and dates back to the end of 1987. He shook off everybody except one. Constantly stalking from less than a second back was the hottest man in racing today, Emerson Fittipaldi. Through to the first pit stop, Fittipaldi was content to wait, staying close with no untoward risks taken, making his presence known, and the wait paid off. On the first pit stop, things fell apart for Michael and his crew. A bad stop, a bump with his father just ahead in his pit, and Michael's hopes were dashed. On the lead, Fittipaldi made no mistakes the rest of the way, constantly building on his lead lap after lap, extending it to as much as 35 seconds over second-place Mario Andretti before claiming a 17-second margin of victory, his 3rd in a row and his 4th of the year. Emerson Fittipaldi is now the odds-on favorite to couple an IndyCar championship with his 2 World Championship. Only one other man in history has been able to do that. He is Mario Andretti. Fittipaldi has 107 points and is 27 ahead of second-place Rick Mears, a good deal more ahead of all the rest, as they head to the Meadowlands in a little over a week's time for the next event on the card. For Motorweek Illustrated, I'm Chris McClure.
Thank you, Chris. Fittipaldi has been our Racer of the Week twice this year, so maybe it's time we gave credit to his crew for prepping their 3rd winner in a row. The Pat Patrick team collects our U.S. Air Force Reserve Commander's Performance Award. Congratulations from the 452nd Air Refueling Wing, March Air Force Base in California. We have several silly season stories today, rumors of driver changes. By far the best is the report that late-night comedian David Letterman will drive a Quaker State Porsche IndyCar next year. With tongues firmly in cheek, the Porsche folks have announced that Letterman will get a test drive next Thursday, results to be aired that night on his television show. The Saturday race up at Cleveland featured the SCCA Trans Am Series, in which Ford, Chevy, and Oldsmobile are locked in a weekly battle for the headlines. Olds got the Cleveland nod, Irv Hare's fourth pole in 5 races. Teammates Scott Sharp and Paul Newman gritted side by side for their Oldsmobile debut. Hare was jumped at the start of the 40-lap race by the Mustang of series point leader Dorsey Schrader, but Irv returned the favor at the end of lap 4 and never looked back. The rough airport circuit hard on the Ford. Schrader dropped out lap 14, suspension problems, followed by Lynn St. James. Lap 36, the engine died. Newman was spectacular in number 75, coming from 25th to 5th after an early spin and dodging the misfortunes of others along the way. Mike Casuli's blown tire in the number 16 Olds gave the field one last shot at teammate Hare in number 15, but Irv just drove right away from him to become the season's first repeat winner. Tommy Kendall's runner-up finish moves him within a point of non-finisher Schrader in the series standings. Good news, bad news this week for network racecaster Paul Page. After a 7-day trial on income tax evasion charges, a jury took only 2 hours to render a not guilty verdict on all counts. The bad news is reflected in Page's post-verdict statement, which says, quote, "This 2.5-year nightmare is over. It cost me almost $100,000 to prove my innocence. In a case like this, the IRS still wins," unquote. When we come back, Mike Joy is going to tell us about the Firecracker 400.
How do you keep a major city running smoothly? Atlanta does it with Quaker State Motor Oil. In every fire truck, every police car, every Atlanta city-owned vehicle. The big Q stands for quality.
It's just a pure and natural beer for you. So icy cold, so crisp, so clear.
Of all the beers that are cold filtered, only one has that distinctively clean, crisp taste. Budweiser, cold filtered and Beechwood aged for over 110 years.
This Bud's for you.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown. Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. Braking. Comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
Now you can own the car you've always dreamed of. Call in your bid during a live toll-free telephone auction. It's the Collector Car Classics, Friday at midnight Eastern, live on ESPN.
Mike Joy joins us for the stock car news. Everybody knew a Thunderbird was going to win at Daytona 4th of July. The question was, which Thunderbird?
Well, Mark Martin started the day off on the top of the list, but his up-and-down afternoon finally ended in disaster. On the other hand, a slow start for Davey Allison was followed by an impressive victory. Restrictor plate racing has provided a spectator spectacular, beginning with a first-lap spin for Patty Moise, who has a sad history of early race misfortunes at Daytona. Now watch Bill Elliott go to the grass to win the race off pit road, while Allison stays put. An electrical bug dropped him off the early pace. After a long truce, the Who Hit Who boys, Dale Earnhardt in black and Jeff Bodine in yellow, were at it again. But the guy who suffered most was pole sitter Mark Martin. In line for a $98,000 Unocal bonus, if he could win from the pole, he finds himself at the back of the pack. Restarts like this 5-wide fandango are a key element in restricted races because once everybody gets back in line, you have no power to pass. On the other hand, more than half the field was on the lead lap at halfway, and it's pretty hard to fault this kind of close racing. Late in the day, the rejuvenated Davey Allison took the lead from Earnhardt, who later equalized a tire. Then comes Jimmy Spencer's near miss. The rookie just did get by the slithering Neil Bonnet, and now fuel becomes an issue. Third place Elliott fakes toward pit road. Davey Allison goes in and gets a splash, and the resurgent Martin stays out and is leading when Lake Speed provides the fireworks. A wild tumble down the Daytona backstretch, only to be T-boned by Dave Marcus, who had no place to go. Now this one's worth another look. Sterling Marlin close by the wall, tags Speed and sends him flying. Marlin slips past, as does Darrell Waltrip, but Derek Cope makes a sharp turn. Bam, there's the wall. Everybody else sneaks to the inside. Now here's the view we all got from Rusty Wallace in the in-car camera. Rusty grabbed third gear and got by. Darrell Waltrip's the last man to find himself sideways and sliding as the 400-miler sets up for a finish. The favored T-Birds are 1, 2, 3. Martin, Elliott, and Allison have a go. But Martin's crew miscalculated the fuel, and instead of picking up that big bonus, Mark ran out of gas with 5 laps to go and finished 16th. Elliott got shuffled to 4th on the last few circuits, and as they turn for home, Phil Parsons nips him for 3rd. Allison holds off Morgan Shepherd, who didn't know it was the last lap. While Mark Martin endured the worst misfortune, all but one of the Winston Cup contenders suffered Saturday. Earnhardt, Wallace, and Waltrip filled the 3 spots right behind Martin, 17th, 18th, and 19th, so the big gainer was 5th-ranked Bill Elliott. The Winston Cup champ is now within 200 points of leader Earnhardt, coming back from a deficit of 322.
And now, Mr. Joy, let's get to the real excitement in that silly season. And what's Rusty Wallace going to do for 1990?
Our Benny Phillips reported here a month ago, and an Atlanta paper confirmed this week. Rusty's agent is talking with Roger Penske about fielding a Winston Cup team.
We would not begin to make odds on the likelihood of that Penske-Wallace matchup, but if they do hook up, I'll bet you a beer that the car's got a Miller paint job on it.
Or maybe a Pennzoil oil can. Elsewhere, Ricky Rudd gave car owner Kenny Bernstein notice over the weekend he's leaving the Quaker State team at the end of the season. Bernstein says he's surprised. He firmly denies that the team is for sale and says he's shopping for a driver and for cars, since Buick has no firm commitments for next season.
Now, the rumor mongers quickly added Rudd to a long list of candidates to replace Terry Labonte in the Junior Johnson Thunderbirds next year. We're betting that Rudd is bound for Jeff Bodine's ride, and we're convinced that Junior still wants Alan Kulwicki. Tried to hire him last time. Junior's problem with Kulwicki is Alan likes running his own team, doesn't care about splitting the money with anybody, and I got to think that Junior's going to have a pretty tough time convincing Alan that he ought to become a hired gun.
Well, stay tuned, folks, because the soap opera continues all season long. Down the road from Daytona International Speedway, Rob Moroso took another step toward the Busch Grand National Championship, winning the Firecracker 200 at Volusia County Speedway. This one was no contest from the beginning. On the pole, Moroso held back all the heavies, including defending champ Tommy Ellis, for his 3rd win of the season in dominating fashion, leading all but 14 of the 200 laps. Tommy Ellis takes runner-up over Chuck Bowen, L.D. Ottinger, and Jack Ingram, rounding out the top 5. On Tuesday night, Jimmy Spencer took the Busch honors in the 4th of July feature at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
And right now, we've got to let Mike Joy get out of here, because in 45 minutes, right after Sports Center, you'll be back with what?
Collector car classics, restoration tips, a cruise night, and we're going to auction off 3 classic cars to the viewers sitting at home.
I'm going to get my checkbook and join him, and we'll be back with more Motor Week right after this.
News 24 hours a day, what does it really mean? When you're a Continental Cablevision subscriber, it means information round the clock from people who know their news. With the Cable News Network, CNN Headline News, the Financial News Network, and other sources, cable viewers have immediate access to breaking news stories. No matter where the news is happening, where the games are played, or where the weather is developing, it's all at your fingertips whenever you need it. Stay informed with solid information sources and genuine 24-hour news on cable TV from Continental Cablevision.
Six Flags introduces Ninja. He comes out of nowhere and turns you upside down at 65 miles per hour. 2, 3, 4 times. Ninja shows no mercy, but still he'll come back for more. Come back for Ninja, the black belt of roller coasters. New and only at Six Flags.
I'm Bob Lee. Sports Center, 11:30 Eastern Time tonight. Kevin Mitchell, the rampage continues. A wild night at Fenway Park. Big news involving Wade Boggs and John McEnroe at center court. Dan Patrick and I. Sports Center, 11:30 Eastern. We'll see you then.
Before packing off to France for this week's Grand Prix, my regular sidekick Bob Varsha dropped in at historic Watkins Glen, New York, and filed this report on the Camel Continental.
A year ago here at hot and steaming Watkins Glen on the 4th of July, Jaguar failed to finish a car. Jeff Brabham scored Nissan's 5th straight victory en route to his series championship. 1989, Watkins Glen is hot and steaming once again, and history certainly repeated itself on the racetrack.
Jan Lammers put the new turbocharged Jag into the early lead over Brabham's Nissan, but the wheels soon came off the Jaguar wagon for the second year in a row. Davy Jones suffered a suspected broken drive shaft in the team's normally aspirated car just 6 laps in, while Lammers made a more spectacular exit when the left rear tire exploded on the back straight.
I was just flat out on the straight, maybe about 180, 190 miles an hour. And all of a sudden the tire just exploded and took the whole left rear body off. And I experienced the biggest spin I had in my life.
That left the car the Nissan team fears most, the Toyota of Drake Olson and Juan Manuel Fangio, who passed Chip Robinson and led handily until the last round of pit stops. Robinson handed the Nissan over to Brabham in a nifty 30 seconds, while Fangio surprised his crew by pitting early. In the confusion, the team was penalized for a safety violation. By the time the nightmare ended a minute and 14 seconds later, the Nissan was long gone en route to season victory number 6, launching Brabham into the series points lead for the 2nd straight year. The surprise runner-up was the V8 Chevy Spice, driven by veterans Jim Miller and Bob Earl, who overtook Olson with 3 laps to go, lending support to IMSA's standing argument that a non-turbo stock block engine can be competitive in this high-tech, turbo-dominated series.
Made some improvements on the car the last few races, and it's really coming around for us. The suspension's been changed. We have a new injection system on the motor. It's giving us a lot of bottom end, and it's really making a big difference.
The heavy attrition also claimed the new twin-turbo Porsche of Daytona winners Bob Wallach and John Andretti, boosting the Camel Lights winning Mazda of Jim Downing and Howard Katz to 5th overall, worth a class record payoff of more than $26,000.
But the big Camel GT feature wasn't the only action on this important holiday weekend here at the Glen.
Saturday's Formula Atlantic race featured a wheel-to-wheel showdown between the top 2 drivers in season points, Jocko Cunningham in white and Colin Truman in red. Cunningham finally made this pass and went on to his 3rd victory of the season. One pass also decided the Barber Saab race, Robbie Buell getting the better of series leader Justin Bell here en route to scoring his 2nd win of the year. And somewhere in this little scrimmage, former football great Walter Payton is getting his front end realigned in his international sedan debut. Payton went on to finish 13th behind pole sitter Dave Jolly, who led from flag to flag in his Mazda.
And that's the story here from Watkins Glen, New York. I'll leave you in Dave's capable hands now and see you in 2 weeks following the British Grand Prix.
And in the meantime, we'll keep pace with Bob's travels and all the Formula One action here on ESPN. We'll bring you all the excitement of Sunday's French Grand Prix, and the time will be 12 noon Eastern here on ESPN. Hard to believe, but Jeff Brabham is actually ahead of his Camel GT Championship pace of a year ago. For his 6th win and 8 starts in his 3rd straight, Jeff Brabham, king of the Camel GT Series, is Motorweek Illustrated Racer of the Week. On the water, the unlimited hydroplane season swung past the halfway point with the annual Indiana Governor's Cup race on the Ohio River. Bill Callis has our report.
Jim Kropfeld and Miss Budweiser averaged 133.7 miles an hour on the final heat, beating George Woods Jr. and Oh Boy Alberto by more than 1 mile an hour. Scott Pearson, Mr. Pringles, was 3rd. It was the 3rd victory at Madison for Kropfeld and his 2nd in 4 races this season. He said racing in Madison is like coming home.
I only live 65 miles from here, and I've been racing down here for 26 years now in the smaller class boats and with the Miss Budweiser. But I know many, many people down there. It's a small town, 13,000, and it's kind of like being with your family.
The race was run in a steady rain. Miss Budweiser ran away with the win after Chip Hanauer's Circus stopped with a blown engine.
For some reason, in the 3rd and the final heat, when I'd get to the corner, if I tried to use any power through the corner, the engine would shut off.
For Bernie Little, owner of the Miss Budweiser, the win puts his boat right where it belongs, in the winner's circle.
It seems like we're coming from behind here the last couple of years, but we did catch up with the Circus today and went into 1st place where we belong and where we're going to stay.
In Madison, Indiana, Bill Callis reporting for Motorweek Illustrated.
Overseas, the 2nd round of the World Powerboat Grand Prix provided our holiday weekend fireworks. Guido Capolini knows there's a problem but isn't sure what it is until somebody yells fire. Guido decides it's time to hit the exits after a word of encouragement for the safety crew to do their work quickly and well. Give him credit for trying, but there was more fire here than fire extinguisher. And so a second crew tried to swamp the crippled craft, and that didn't work either. And by this time, there wasn't a whole lot left for the A team to take matters into their own hands, lift the bow, and dunk the motor. We move on to the main event. Jonathan Jones whipped past reigning European champ Steve Curtin. He promptly hit Jones' wake, hooked a hard right, and went into the seawall. Curtin was unhurt except for that sinking feeling that came with watching Englishman Jones streak away to a 17-second margin of victory. Big day for the winner of his home country's Grand Prix. Still ahead, a trip to the California desert, a sprint car shootout, and a new point leader in motorcycle racing. Stay with us.
The thinking that went into your Firestone tires took a lot of different tracks. At the toughest tracks in the country, we run in all sorts of competitions. We race a lot. We learn a lot. And it all goes into every Firestone tire we make. Firestone. Watch us. We're on the move.
Got Firestones again, huh?
I've got a one-track mind.
For reaching deep, for going long, for digging in when things go wrong, for pushing hard in all you do, that extra yard for coming through this much for you.
Beechwood aged for the taste so crisp and clean, so refreshing. It's the king of beers.
This much for you. Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Quaker State exceeds every single car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection. Quaker State engines don't know when to quit because Quaker State oil doesn't know when to quit. The big Q stands for quality.
For a select group of motorsports enthusiasts, the most exciting racetrack in America is the Mojave Desert. Now, this place is heaven for the likes of Robbie Gordon, who cut his teeth out here as a teenage dune buggy racer and has now turned into the leading pickup truck racer in America. He won his class at the Fireworks 250 held outside Barstow, California last weekend. But as Robbie came across to take the class honors, he was frustrated. He lost the overall title by a margin of 1 minute. That went to the dune buggy of Bob Ritchie, Corona, California. And perhaps in frustration, Robbie then canceled his planned trip to Colorado, where he was supposed to run the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. For one small slice of the racing fraternity, the 4th of July weekend does indeed mean the biggest race of the year, but this year, that hill climb is going to run the Sunday after the 4th. And so all week, an international assortment of pavement and dirt track racers have been charging up the famed Colorado Peak, practicing for Sunday's assault on the 14,000-foot summit. This is one of the oldest organized racing events in America. The climb now attracting such international hotshots as this guy. That's the former World Rally champion, Ari Vatanen. He's driving a factory Peugeot along with Robbie Unser, whose family has been winning hill climbs there for generations. This is the entry we think bears watching. $250,000 four-wheel drive Lamborghini. Rambo Lambo. Get you up the hill in style. Pending Sunday's outcome, it's my recommendation for upscale hill climbing. In World of Outlaw sprint car action, the point leader, Bobby Davis Jr., won again South Dakota on Monday. That maintains his narrow series lead over Jeff Swindell. 3 nights of West Coast sprint car racing over the holiday weekend. The winners, Brent Kading, and Brent Kading. And the United Sprint Association offered fans at Knoxville, Iowa something different. Sprint car match races pitting 3 old and sometimes bitter rivals. It's Doug Wolfgang inside, Steve Kinzer in the middle, Sammy Swindell outside. A series of 3-lap sprints. First man to take 2 takes home the money. And here's the clincher. Swindell hooks the berm and drops back. Kinzer takes an unsuccessful shot at Wolfgang, who goes on to an easy win. How about it, Wolf? What do you think of match racing?
One of these times they're going to have a deal like that, and all 3 cars are going to go down the front straightaway end over end. And it's going to be the end of it, and then everybody's going to say, darn, I wished I wouldn't have run that. So I have no regrets tonight because I got paid, but sometime it might not be as good a deal.
Speaking of bad deals, in motorcycle road racing, current point leader Wayne Rainey beat the defending world champion Eddie Lawson in Sunday's Belgian Grand Prix. Kevin Schwans again fell off on the last lap while leading. John Kosinski an impressive 3rd in his 500cc World Championship debut. But the results were thrown out. It seems that race was stopped and restarted twice due to heavy rains. The rule book provides for only one such restart. Rainey and others have protested the nullification. And in Camel Pro dirt track action at Hagerstown, Maryland, Will Davis held off the Harley-Davidson factory team until first Scotty Parker and later teammate Chris Carr came past. Davis won his first series race 2 weeks ago in Ohio. He held on for third. That's a big win for the defending series champion Parker. It is his third checkered flag of the season, and for the first time this year, he leads the championship standings. We're going to come back with the latest motorcycle exploits of jumper Robbie Knievel after this timeout.
Prado, the fastest growing name in auto parts today. Prado, featuring quality auto parts at lower prices. It's summer and you're hot. The traffic is not moving and your air conditioner is on the blink. Prado has the answer. Quality Everco air conditioning parts. From a simple switch to a complex compressor, Everco has what you need.
When you need to know about auto parts, ask the pro at Pronto.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown, Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. Braking. Comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
Hold on tight as ESPN brings you more Formula One action. The dominating McLaren team may be losing speed. Can anyone catch them? The Grand Prix of France, Sunday on ESPN.
Well, the International Hot Rod Association got an early start on the July 4th fireworks last weekend at Mile and Dragway in Michigan. Saturday night, Top Fuel qualifying offered the rockets red glare, bombs bursting in air, Hank Andres in the far lane setting a new track ET record. But watch Don Kohler coming through in flames big time. Don got out okay after the fire went out. Story in Top Fuel, Dennis Forcell. He made the field as second alternate. Qualifiers Jack Revell broke, and Connie Colito allegedly punched out a cop, didn't get the race. Forcell went all the way to the final, but there the clock struck midnight for Cinderella. Gene Snow, a winner by 0.04 of a second. In Nitro Funny Car, Jerry Caminito, right lane from the drag racing hotbed of Brooklyn, New York, caught Doc Holliday asleep at the light, coasted home to his first career win. And finally in Pro Stock, four-time IHRA champ Ricky Smith, near lane, parked his NHRA motor. He's got a 715 cubic inch mountain motor to put away Mark Pauken and get his first win of the year. Finally today, motorcycle daredevil Robbie Knievel demonstrated that he intends to follow in his father's footsteps when he jumped the Caesars Palace fountains last April. While at the Hula Bowl in Honolulu last weekend, Robbie demonstrated how literally we can take that. He's short, takes exactly the kind of tumble that made his father a household name. Show us where it hurts, Robbie. We're going to take another look at the attempt in a driving rain that may have been a factor here. Yeah, it looks terrible, but the fact is young Knievel walked away from the fall and announced to the crowd that he'd be back to try it again the next night. Well, it's no surprise the place was packed, and here's what they saw. Faced with a short runoff, Robbie has to plow the bales to get the thing stopped, but that's of little concern as he feasts on the same adulation that fueled his father's career. Like father, like son, I guess. There is Evil on the right, sharing the spillover from the limelight. And for better or worse, it looks like motorcycle jumping will again be big box office in 1989. And we won't bother you kids with the warning about not trying this at home. We know the kids who watch Motorweek are too smart for that. We will tell you that we're coming back next week with another edition. Our airtime next week remains the same. We're not going to move around on you. We will be here next Friday night at 11 o'clock Eastern Time with another edition of Motorweek Illustrated. We have some fan cam offerings that have come in over the holidays. We'll take a look at those, perhaps bring you a couple. And we'll have an interview with Ludwig Heimrath, the IndyCar driver, and complete coverage of the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. I'm Dave DeSpain. We'll see you next week.
Winning on the NASCAR circuit takes dedication, teamwork, and a strong will to succeed. You'll find that same spirit in the Air Force Reserve. We've got a place for you on the winning team.
A leading consumer magazine gave Fram their highest rating. So pay a little now, or a lot later.
Motorweek Illustrated has been brought to you by Pronto, featuring quality auto parts at lower prices.